When the news of Randy Meisner's death broke in July 2023, the music world mourned quietly, almost cautiously. He had been a founding member of the Eagles, the man whose soaring tenor carried Take It to the Limit into history. Yet for decades he lived in the shadows of Glenn Frey and Don Henley. What caught everyone's attention wasn't just the tributes that poured in, but the long-awaited words of Don Henley himself. After years of silence, Henley finally opened up about the bandmate he once clashed with so bitterly, revealing memories and confessions no one had expected. His statement left fans wondering if regret had haunted him all along, from Nebraska fields to the stage. Randy Meisner's story began far from the lights of Los Angeles or the sold-out arenas of the 1970s. He was born on March 8, 1946, in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska, a farming town where life revolved around crops, discipline, and endless fields. His family worked in fruit farming, but while the land demanded patience, young Randy discovered another rhythm pulsing inside him: music. Through old radios, he absorbed the voices of Elvis Presley, Little Richard, and the Everly Brothers. He picked up a guitar as a teenager, but it was when he shifted to bass that he truly found his calling. "You're not just playing an instrument," he once said. "You're keeping everything running smoothly." In the mid-1960s, armed with nothing but his bass and ambition, Randy left Nebraska for Los Angeles. The city was buzzing with new bands, recording studios, and cutthroat competition. Meisner joined small groups to get by, but his first real breakthrough came with a short-lived act called The Poor. Not long after, he was invited to join Poco, the pioneering country rock band formed by Richie Furay and Jim Messina after Buffalo Springfield collapsed. Randy's high harmonies and bass lines shaped Poco's early sound, but as the band's debut album was being finalized, internal conflict forced him out. The setback didn't end his climb. He soon found work with Rick Nelson's Stone Canyon Band, where he learned professionalism from one of America's first teen idols. Nelson's demand for precision and his ability to sustain a long career left an impression on Meisner, who quietly absorbed lessons that would later carry him through the chaos of fame. Still, it was only in 1971 that fate opened the right door. Linda Ronstadt needed a backing band for her tour, and Meisner joined forces with Don Henley, Glenn Frey, and Bernie Leadon. Their chemistry was immediate. After the tour, the four decided to form their own group, Eagles. From the start, Randy wasn't just another bass player. On their 1972 self-titled debut album, he sang lead on 3 tracks, matching Frey's total and even outpacing Henley, and co-wrote 3 songs. His Take the Devil became the album's genesis, with all 4 members harmonizing around it. Producer Glyn Johns later recalled, "There it was, the sound. Extraordinary blend of voices, wonderful harmony sound, just stunning." The world had discovered a new force in American music, and Randy's voice was at its core: Rise of the Eagles and the Growing Divide. The Eagles didn't take long to move from rising stars to chart-topping icons. Signed to David Geffen's Asylum Records, they became part of the California country rock movement that defined the early 1970s. Their second album, Desperado, cemented Don Henley and Glenn Frey as the Lennon and McCartney of the group. They co-wrote most of the tracks, and their voices dominated the record. Randy, who had been so prominent on the debut, was now reduced to singing lead on just 1 song with 2 writing credits. Even then, he made his mark. His lone lead, Certain Kind of Fool, carried his distinct, plaintive tone, though the spotlight was slipping further from him. By the third album, On the Border, the imbalance was clear. Randy contributed just 1 track, Is It True?, a ballad that some listeners interpreted as reflecting his own doubts about belonging. "Is it true you've lost that feeling? Is it true you might be leaving?" he sang. Lyrics that hinted at his growing unease inside a band where Henley and Frey increasingly pulled all the strings. The dynamic wasn't just about music, it was about power. When the Eagles first formed, the idea had been equal voices, equal chances. But as success grew, Henley and Frey's ambition tightened its grip. They chose the singles, shaped the sound, and set the direction. Meisner, introverted and conflict-averse, didn't fight back. Bernie Leadon, another founding member, became frustrated with the shift away from country influences and eventually quit. But Randy stayed on, swallowing his frustrations. Then came 1975's One of These Nights, the record that propelled the Eagles into superstardom. Randy's moment finally arrived with Take It to the Limit. Co-written with Henley and Frey, the ballad reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the group's signature songs. Its emotional high notes, delivered with Randy's soaring falsetto, were unlike anything else in the band's catalog. Audiences adored it, and it became a staple of their live shows. But what should have been his triumph also became his curse. The pressure of reproducing those impossible high notes night after night would haunt him for years. By the time Hotel California was released in 1976, the Eagles were the biggest band in America. The album sold more than 30 million copies worldwide and won a Grammy for Record of the Year. Yet Randy's contributions were minimal. He wrote and sang just one track, Try and Love Again. Behind the scenes, he was dealing with a collapsing marriage and the exhaustion of constant touring. Henley once asked him to write the lyrics for Hotel California itself, but Randy admitted he wasn't good with words and missed the chance to secure royalties that could have changed his life. The imbalance was no longer subtle. It was brutal. Knoxville, 1977, the breaking point. By 1977, the Eagles were at their absolute peak. Hotel California had made them global superstars, and the year-long tour that followed filled arenas across the United States and Europe. To the outside world, the band was untouchable. But behind the stage doors, the cracks were deepening. Randy Meisner was struggling with health problems, including stomach ulcers, insomnia, and recurring bouts of the flu. He was homesick, missing his 3 young children, and emotionally drained from a collapsing marriage. Layered on top of that was the suffocating expectation that he would close nearly every show with Take It to the Limit. The song was a fan favorite, an encore that brought audiences to an emotional frenzy. But for Randy, it became a nightmare. The chorus required him to hit soaring falsetto notes, and the fear of failure gnawed at him night after night. "I was always kind of scared," he admitted later. "What if I don't hit it right?" It was a pretty high note on record. It was perfection. On stage, it was torture. The breaking point came during a June 1977 show in Knoxville, Tennessee. Exhausted, hungover from a night of partying and suffering from illness, Randy refused to perform Take It to the Limit as the encore. Glenn Frey confronted him backstage, insisting that the crowd expected it. Accounts differ, but by Frey's telling, he urged Randy, "It's going to be okay, you can sing it." Randy snapped back, "No, man, I'm not going to sing the fucking song." Frey, already frustrated, replied, "Well, fuck you then." What followed has become one of the most infamous moments in the band's history. Randy threw a punch, knocking Frey back against the wall. Police officers stationed backstage rushed in, but Don Henley stopped them, saying, "Stay out of this. This is personal, and it is private, real private." From that moment, Randy's fate was sealed. The rest of the tour was, in his words, pure hell. No one spoke to him. He was treated like an outsider in his own band. Life after the Eagles, solitude and struggles. When Randy Meisner left the Eagles in September 1977, the public explanation was simple: exhaustion. But behind that word was a man broken by conflict, illness, and isolation. While Don Henley and Glenn Frey launched successful solo careers and Joe Walsh cemented his rock legend status, Randy stepped into a very different path, one marked by uncertainty, modest ambition, and painful solitude. In 1978, he released his self-titled solo debut. It contained promising tracks like Hearts on Fire, which reached number 19 on the Billboard Hot 100, yet the album never matched the commercial force of his years with the Eagles. His second solo record in 1980 fared modestly, and although Henley and Frey lent support on the title track, Randy's career never regained momentum. By the time of his third solo album in 1982, it was clear he wasn't chasing fame. He wanted only to make music, but in an industry obsessed with stardom, that humility left him forgotten. Randy tried to stay active through other projects. He reunited with Poco for the 1989 album Legacy, formed new groups like Meisner, Swan, and Rich, and later joined the World Classic Rockers, a supergroup of aging stars from the 60s and 70s. But these ventures belonged more to the nostalgia circuit than the front lines of rock. Unlike his former bandmates, Randy lacked a powerful management team and the drive to dominate the market. Slowly, he slipped from the center of attention. The 1990s brought another sting. In 1994, the Eagles staged their blockbuster Hell Freezes Over reunion tour, named after Henley's remark that the band would only play together again when hell freezes over. Every surviving member was invited back, except Randy. His replacement, Timothy B. Schmidt, was warmly embraced. Randy reached out to longtime manager Irving Azoff, hoping to be included, but he received no response. For him, it was confirmation that he had been erased from the band's official narrative. "You'd think you'd be mentioned if you helped with 6 of the albums," he said bitterly, "but they act as though I never even played with them." The exclusion cut deeply. His absence from the 1994 tour meant no share of the massive profits, no place in the new chapter of Eagles history. He appeared with them only once more, in 1998, when the group was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. For a brief moment, he stood again beside Frey, Henley, Leadon, Walsh, and Felder, performing Hotel California and Take It Easy. It was a fleeting reunion, and afterward he slipped back into obscurity. "Leaving the Eagles," he told Rolling Stone, "is like leaving the mob. Once you're gone, that's it. There's no coming back." As the years passed, Randy's struggles grew darker. He battled bipolar disorder and alcohol abuse. His second marriage, to Lana Ray in 1996, gave him some stability, but it was also marred by heavy arguments. In 2015, his condition was so concerning that a Los Angeles court ordered special medical supervision for his own safety. Then came tragedy in March 2016, when Lana died of a gunshot wound at their California home. Police ruled it an accident while she was moving a rifle, but suspicions swirled about Randy's fragile mental state. He was briefly placed under psychiatric evaluation, and the incident left him devastated. The aftermath: tributes, silences, and Don Henley speaks. When Randy Meisner died on July 26, 2023, from complications of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, tributes came swiftly. Fans flooded forums, social media, and music blogs with videos of his most iconic performances. To them, he was the fragile heart of the Eagles, the man whose high notes in Take It to the Limit defined an era. But from the surviving band members, the response was slower, more measured. The official Eagles statement eventually arrived. It called Randy an integral part of the Eagles and instrumental in the early success of the band. They praised his astonishing vocal range and pointed to Take It to the Limit as proof of his brilliance. The words were respectful, but for many, they felt incomplete. There was no mention of the Knoxville fight, no acknowledgement of the years of estrangement, no apology for the decades in which Randy had been sidelined. It was as if the band wanted to honor his memory without reopening old wounds. What mattered most to fans, however, was the silence of Don Henley. For days, he said nothing. Some wondered if the silence spoke louder than any words. Was it bitterness, regret, or simply grief? Then, finally, Henley spoke. In a statement and later in an interview with Rolling Stone, he offered a glimpse into their complicated past. Henley called Randy an integral part of the early Eagles and described him as a man with a rare gift. More striking, though, was the memory he shared. One night, after a show, Randy sat down and confessed that he wished he had never joined the Eagles. He said he hated everything that came with fame, and that if he could turn back time, he would rather be a carpenter in Nebraska than a rock star. Henley didn't revisit the ugly fights or the way Randy was pushed aside. He didn't mention Knoxville or the bitter years of silence. Instead, he chose to remember the vulnerable side of his bandmate, a man who, for all his talent, had never felt comfortable under the weight of superstardom. For some fans, this felt like Henley's quiet confession, an indirect admission that Randy had never been given the peace he needed. Hidden within the praise was a trace of regret, as if Henley finally acknowledged what had always been clear. Randy Meisner wasn't just another member of the Eagles. He was their soul, and they had lost him long before his death. Legacy, influence, and the questions that remain. Randy Meisner's death revived an old question. How should he be remembered in Eagles history? The spotlight has long focused on Don Henley and Glenn Frey, yet without Randy's soaring tenor and steady bass, the band's trademark harmonies would not have existed. From Take It Easy to Best of My Love, his vocals held the blend together, and with Take It to the Limit, he proved he could deliver one of their most powerful ballads. Still, Randy never received full recognition. As Henley and Frey took control, his voice and opinions were pushed aside. He admitted later, "I was part of the group, but I didn't feel like I belonged." His humility, once his strength, left him overshadowed. Even so, his influence stretched far beyond the Eagles. Take It to the Limit was covered by legends like Etta James and Willie Nelson, while his early work with Poco helped shape country rock. To fans, he embodied the vulnerable human side of the band. Yet questions remain. Why was he excluded from reunion tours? Why was his name so often erased? Henley's tribute in 2023 praised him, but left those wounds unaddressed. What cannot be denied is that Randy's voice still echoes, on records, on playlists, and in the hearts of listeners who refuse to forget him. Randy Meisner's journey was filled with triumph and heartbreak, from the fields of Nebraska to the heights of superstardom, and finally to the quiet shadows of his later years. His story reminds us that behind the fame, the lights, and the records sold, there are fragile human beings carrying burdens we rarely see. Don Henley's words after his death may not have answered every question, but they forced the world to look back at Randy with the respect he always deserved. Do you still listen to Take It to the Limit today, and what does Randy's voice mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next story.